Hello everyone and welcome to today's pre-launch status briefing for the Orb-2 mission to the International Space Station. Orbital Science's Cygnus cargo spacecraft is loaded with about 3,000 pounds of cargo for the space station and its crew. The Antares rocket is poised for liftoff tomorrow at 12:52 p.m. Eastern Time from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport's Launchpad 0A here at NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. Here to talk about how preparations for tomorrow's launch are going are Frank Culbertson, Executive Vice President of Orbital Sciences, Mike Pinkston, Antares Program Manager for Orbital, Sarah Doherty, Test Director at Wallops Flight Facility, and joining us by phone from Houston, Dan Hartman, Deputy International Space Station Program Manager. For those of you watching us on TV today or through the web, we'll take your questions through social media. You can use the hashtag AskNASA, and we'll get your question asked in here. Dan, why don't we start with you on the phone?
All right, thank you, Rachel, and good afternoon, everybody from Houston. Let's see, teams at Orbital here in the Control Center and our crew on board ISS, we've been extremely busy in preparation for the launch of Orb-2 tomorrow. I just checked in with the flight director in the control room, and the ISS is ready to receive Cygnus. We've checked out our proximity control system, inspected the Node 2 CBM port, installed our centerline berthing camera, and we provided some extra time for the crew to conduct some SSRMS proficiency training for the berthing operation. All this was completed successfully last week. All other systems on board, the ISS are ready. We conducted a readiness review at the IMNT with the partnership and gave a go for the mission. So we're good to go and look forward to it tomorrow. On Friday morning, we did move up a planned reboost that we had for later in the week. We've been tracking a repeating debris item, and teams agreed on a new burn plan. So we performed that reboost debris avoidance maneuver yesterday. It's posing no problems for Cygnus berthing, and also sets us up for the 56P docking later in the month. As far as the Orb-2 mission, with the launch tomorrow, Swanee will capture Cygnus on Wednesday the 16th, and then we will begin cargo transfer operations almost immediately, and start our new research campaign with the resupply of that cargo to the ISS. As Rachel mentioned, total cargo transfer is just over 1,650 kilograms, 650 kilograms of food, which we're glad to be receiving to replenish our pantries, and we have about 325 kilograms of additional research will be taken on board. We will also be carrying a pump for the Japanese module. They suffered a failure a few months back, and so we're carrying a replacement pump up for them. That'll get them back up to complete redundancy. And we also have a new installation kit for our nitrogen and oxygen delivery systems. This is just a kit that we will use to outfit the airlock, and then on subsequent missions we'll be carrying the actual tanks to resupply our O2 and N2 high pressure needs. So our plan is to keep Cygnus on board for about a month, fill it with the disposal cargo, and then prepare ourselves for the next mission, which will be the ATV in late July. We're really looking forward to this resupply mission. And so I know the teams at Wallops have been working tirelessly to prepare the vehicle for launch, so I'll turn it over to Frank for the orbital status.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. That was a good summary of the contents of the mission and what we're trying to accomplish. On behalf of David Thompson and the rest of the Orbital team, I want to say we're very proud and pleased to be back here at Wallops again, conducting this operation leading up to the launch of Antares and the rendezvous of Cygnus with the International Space Station to carry over 1,650 kilograms of cargo to the station. We're real proud to be a part of the team that is keeping the station flying and providing the crew with the cargo and the research that they need. The research really is one of the most important aspects of what we are resupplying them with. because that's what the station is there for, is to conduct research. And we like being a part of that. We like knowing what we're carrying, and we like participating in some of the activities that occur afterwards and explaining to students and teachers and other interested people of what we're doing up there and why it's important that we carry this cargo. It's been a little bit of a challenge to get to this point, L-1. There have been a number of issues. We started back in May with an anticipated launch date that was moved because of issues with other launch ranges and launch vehicles, and then we moved into June, and then we had to delay off of the earlier June date to work some technical issues, and here we are getting ready to launch on June 13th. Mike Pinkston will talk a little bit more about the issues we worked through on the launch vehicle itself. On Cygnus, we've conducted all the necessary rehearsals, the integrated training with NASA, trained the crew, and the team is really ready to go and conduct this mission. As Dan said, we will rendezvous early on the morning of the 16th and begin unloading the cargo. We'll remain on orbit for 30 to 45 days after that, depending on the ISS traffic model. They've got quite a problem they're having to deal with in terms of so many vehicles coming. It's a good problem. But we will, in fact, stay up there as long as necessary to fill the cargo module with as much disposable cargo as possible, and then re-enter about 5 days after we finish closing the hatch and leaving the station. We're going to conduct some experiments of our own during those 5 days to continue to improve on the performance of our systems, make sure that we can give NASA the best service possible, both coming and going to and from the station. So we'll stay up for a few extra days. I do want to mention a couple of other things. One is that this particular spacecraft is named the SS Janus Voss. Janus is a friend of many of us, both at Orbital and in the NASA community, particularly the NASA astronaut office. Early in her career, after attending Purdue, she worked at Orbital Sciences for about 3 or 4 years as an engineer, and then was selected as an astronaut and flew 5 missions for NASA. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple of years ago, and it was a great loss to the whole team and to the NASA community, but we wanted to honor her and her family by naming the spacecraft after Janus, and we think it's a fitting tribute to a really fine engineer and an outstanding astronaut and a great human being, and we're proud to be able to continue that tradition. The other thing I want to mention is that the importance of the International Space Station, in my view, continues to grow. The complication of keeping it supplied, of keeping it flying, and even politically keeping it supported by the various governments around the world continues to be a challenge. But I think that almost everybody involved in it around the world understands the importance of maintaining this foothold on the high ground in space, because it is the next stepping stone to wherever we're going to go next, whether it's the moon, Mars, asteroids, further out into the solar system. We need to continue to do that. If you think about it, when we have people in space, the ones we are supplying up there, it's real important that we use the opportunity of having humans in space to look back on the Earth. When I was in space, I looked at it as what we in my day used to call a self-portrait. Now I guess we call it a selfie. But we're looking at the Earth to see what we look like, and then we send the pictures all around the world. And I think it's a great opportunity to continue to do that and to continue to keep the interest up in space flight. So again, we're proud to be a part of that. Look forward to the launch tomorrow, and I look forward to the Antares team doing their usual spectacular job of getting us into space. And over to Mike Pinkston.
Thanks, Frank. I think we have a short video to show and get that rolling. In the meantime, I'd say we're extremely proud to be here, and I think the launch vehicle is ready to go. I think these are some shots of the getting prepared for the final cargo load into Cygnus. And then here we go with the team working to load that final cargo into the Cygnus in our horizontal integration facility over on the island. Lots of good work going on there to get that stuff, configured and properly stowed and ready for flight. Here's some more of that. It's like some of this critical research payloads going into the Cygnus. And we do this very late in the flow, and once we get the critical cargo into the Cygnus, it starts a very short timeline for us to get the launch vehicle prepared, closed out, and ready to go. There are a number of closeout activities, tests that have to run, and the like of that. But before we can prep to launch, and we really need we need everything to really go like clockwork in order to hit our timeline to get to launch. And you know, as Frank alluded, as we continue to watch the cargo loading process into the Cygnus, we did run into some some hiccups along the way this time around. A lot of it weather related, as you can imagine. The recent storms that we had in the area the last few days, we can't roll the rocket out to the pad and certainly not conduct hazardous ordnance ops with that sort of weather in the area. So we ended up taking some significant delays, several hours at a time as the team tried to work through and around the weather. As that threw us off course a couple of times, and looks like the video stopped.
Yeah, ignore it.
Okay. So anyway, we worked through a lot of significant issues with the weather. I ran into a couple of technical issues along the way. I think we finally got to roll out Thursday morning early. Worked through the day and worked through a couple of issues the last day or so. And at this point, we've got the vehicle in its final throes of launch preps. Went through the LRR just about a couple hours ago, and at this point we're ready to launch. Very proud to be here, and the team has worked extremely hard. Both Orbital, the Wallops, Mars, and NASA JSC customer to work around some significant hurdles and get us to where we are today, ready to go. We're looking forward to tomorrow. So I think with that, I'll pass it over to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Mike. The NASA Wallops launch range is responsible for tracking and ensuring a safe flight of the Antares vehicle, and one of the final milestones in that process is our launch readiness review, which we conducted just a little bit earlier today, where our facility director granted the final authority to proceed with the launch operation. So as far as that goes, we've jumped over that final milestone and we're ready to go tomorrow. I have an image here to show you all to talk about our range support. From a data and communications perspective and range support, we have instrumentation including radars and telemetry and command systems located here at Wallops, as well as a downrange site in Bermuda, where we also provide tracking support for the flight of the vehicle. And all those systems, or instrumentation as we call it, have been configured and verified, ready to support launch. We've gone through numerous procedures over the last couple days to check out those systems and verify that they are ready to go. Another part of ensuring safe flight for launch is to ensure that the launch area and the hazard areas are clear. So we do that by getting approval from external agencies like the FAA and some military operations organizations that control airspace and sea surface space off our coast here. So we have issued all of our notices to airmen, notices to mariners, to get the word out that we are launching and what our hazard areas are for tomorrow. I'll roll into our weather forecast now, which is looking very good for tomorrow. So this is provided by our launch weather officer. And tomorrow we're looking at partly cloudy skies with a slight breeze. Winds are going to be out of the south with about 10 to 15 knots. Temperatures in the mid-80s, and taking all that into consideration, that gives us a 90% probability of great conditions for launch. So tomorrow is going to be a really nice day considering it's summer in July and we're in the mid-Atlantic region. So tomorrow looks really great. And with that, and roll into my next picture here, you should get to see this launch from a pretty far distance, so somewhere from about New Jersey to North Carolina. With the good weather conditions, will provide a really great view of anybody along the eastern seaboard there to check it out. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rachel.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. All right, we'll take some questions from folks here and on the phone as well. As a reminder, for those watching from afar, you can send us your questions via social media using the hashtag AskNASA. And if you wouldn't mind stating your name and affiliation and to whom you're addressing your question, that will really help us out, especially with Dan on the phone. Ken, do you want to start? We have a mic.
Thank you. Ken Kramer for Universe Today. My question is for Frank and Mike. Can you talk a little bit about the engine problem that you had with what exactly was the problem in Mississippi with the engine damage? Talk a little bit about the inspections. What was the lessons learned, and what's the way forward, please? Thank you.
I can take a stab at that. I think as you know, we had a failure in acceptance test of one of our engines, engine 17 was the nomenclature. That obviously sparked a very thorough investigation led by Aerojet Rocketdyne, our engine supplier, but supported fully by Orbital and a lot of help from NASA and some of the various NASA centers and specific expertise that they brought to bear. That was a lengthy process and the primary source of the delay from the early part of June to where we are today as we worked our way through that. One of the outcomes of that process was a desire to go back and conduct some specific inspections of the engines. Really, it'll happen to all engines, but first and foremost to the engines that we had on the Orb-2 vehicle out here at Wallops at the time, to confirm the presence and proper configuration of some critical features within the engine that were in areas of interest relative to the failure and what the investigation had concluded as far as some of the likely potential causes. That was obviously a favorable result. We saw what we needed to see, and with that and with the fact that these engines have successfully passed the same acceptance process, not only here in the United States but also twice after original manufacturing in Russia. They've got a lot of test time on them. We've got a lot of confidence that the two engines on Orb-2 are ready to go.
I just want to add to that the cooperation between the various organizations in evaluating the problem with Engine 17, from Orbital and Aerojet to the NASA personnel at Cygnus, Marshall, JSC, and headquarters has been phenomenal, and that helps us get to a favorable result as we deal with problems like this. The same as what we've had this week in dealing with some of the issues we've had to work through. The NASA, Mars, Orbital team has started working together even more smoothly than before, and I think we're going to see that this becomes a routine situation where we work as one team when we're leading up to the launch, and we achieve success by putting the pieces together with the best professionals available, and everybody chips in and works really hard, and we sure appreciate that.
Other questions? Jeff?
Jeff Bouse, Space Review. For Sarah, you mentioned getting the notices out to mariners and such. Given that this launch is taking place in the middle of a day on a weekend in the height of tourist season, do you do anything special to make sure that the range, that there's no boats getting into the restricted areas, given also the very short launch window that's available?
Sure. Typically, we do a lot of work to ensure those types of things. For this one, we have taken an extra step, like you mentioned, because of just the time of year that it is, and it is a weekend day. So we've made a huge effort to go out and talk to all the recreational boaters, make some visits to the harbors that are here where people would be launching their boats from. We also have, per the Code of Federal Regulations and with the help of the Coast Guard and Northern Virginia Marine Police, an area called a danger zone, which is about a 30 nautical mile sector just off our coast here, where we have fine and arrest authority there to actually clear people out of our hazard areas. So we have made those extra strides for this launch, and we're confident that we can have a clear range for the first second of that 5-minute window. Let's go here.
Hi, Robert Perlman with Collect Space. For Frank and Dan, it was noted today that today is the 5,000th day of continuous crewed ops on the space station, and it may be a little obvious, but I wonder how critical deliveries such as Cygnus is providing is to maintaining that record of continuous ops and pushing it forward.
I suggest that Dan answers the question of the actual criticality. The way we look at it at Orbital is every flight is critical. We carry a variety of types of cargo on board, which includes food and basic supplies for the crew, and also the research, as I said. They really can't afford to get behind on any of that with 6 people up there, and if we're going to keep 6 people on the station, we need a routine and regular delivery of cargo, and that's what we're trying to establish with this service.
Yeah, and Robert, you mentioned 5,000 days, and that's certainly, celebratory in its own right. Just over a couple months ago, we reached 5 years on orbit with 6-person crew, and so, the milestones that we're achieving are pretty remarkable. 15 years on board as well. So, but as Frank mentions, right, you gotta resupply the crew. You got to keep the research flowing up to them. You got to have a reliable return of some research samples. There's a lot of system maturation that we need to do that we're testing out on the ISS if we're going to go deeper and further into space. It could be the regen ecosystem, understanding radiation a little bit better, effects on the human body, just a host of technical challenges that we know are out there, and the way to succeed and buy down all that risk is to have these vehicles, Cygnuses, the ATVs, the HTVs, the SpaceXs, have a consistent resupply of not only the supplies needed for the crew, but also the cutting edge technology demonstrations that we need to fly, to test, yes, fail at times, retest, just to have that big learning experience as we go forward.
Okay, a couple more here, and then we'll go to the phone.
Harvey Leifert, freelance science writer. My question, I think, is for Dan Hartman. I'm concerned about the garbage issue. As I understand it, the return trip, which will end in the Atlantic Ocean, will be carrying a lot of trash from the space station. And I wonder why, rather than further pollute the ocean, it isn't simply figuratively kicked out the door on a downward trajectory that will cause it to burn up in the atmosphere.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't copy the name, but that's exactly what we do. There is, and Frank can explain with the Cygnus vehicle, himself. But the trash, the trajectories we take to come in through the atmosphere, it is a completely burn up of those vehicles, and so. At times, we do have very, very heavy items that we do specific analysis on. That very, very rarely, but and then we build a trajectory of where those specific items should hit Earth. But in general, all these vehicles, the Russian vehicles, the HTVs, the ATVs, the Cygnus vehicles, they all completely burn up on reentry, and nothing makes it back down into the ocean.
Okay.
This is J.D. Taylor with USA in Space. First, I wanted to say thank you for launching from Wallops. It's nice to have it much more local for myself, but also I think it's a beautiful location. Are all of your flights, as for Dan, are all your flights going to be from Wallops, and are you finding some advantage to that as being visible from D.C. that might help more of the space interest?
Is that for us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you're right.
Yes, right now the Antares, the only launch site that is prepared for Antares is here at Orbital, and of course it belongs to the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, an offshoot of Virginia Space Flight Authority. They are a tenant here at NASA, and it's been a really good teamwork effort to bring this launch facility here and to bring the rocket here. The Antares is designed specifically to operate out of this field, out of this spaceport, but it could operate out of others if we have enough customers and we require enough increase in launch rate to go other places. But we like launching out of Wallops. We got a good relationship with everybody in the area, and it also gets us a little bit away from the congestion of traffic that other launch sites occasionally have. And it also is well situated to put us in the space station orbit as we leave and fly to the southeast.
Okay, I think we have a couple on the phone. We'll start with Irene Klotz of Reuters.
Thanks, Rachel. I have several questions. The first is for you, Frank. 6 months ago, you said that you weren't able to discuss any other prospective customers for Antares. Has anything changed on that count?
No.
Thanks. And if Mike went into this a little bit, it got cut out by the operator on the call about the upshot of the AJ-26 failure. What was the problem there? And then I have two quick ones for Dan. Thanks.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, can't get in too much detail about the actual nature of the problem, but I did mention that based on our investigation, we did do some specific targeted inspections of the fleet of engines we have, most notably the two that are on the Orb-2 rocket right now, and did see what we needed to see in terms of proper configuration and of some specific features of concern. And then obviously those engines have a pretty solid test history behind them as well. So we're very confident that we got two good engines on the vehicle.
Thanks very much. And for Dan, what is the current schedule for the next SpaceX launch? And are you still planning on issuing the final RFP for the CRS-2 follow-on contract on September 30th? Thank you.
Yeah, let's see. Actually, I think it was Irene, right? We're having what we call our Space Station Control Board on Tuesday, where we're going to go over our forward manifesting plans. Right now, what we'll show at that review is SpaceX 4 on 9/12, September 12th. And then, I'm sorry, the RFP, I probably need to check. We put an RFI out for recently for the CRS-2. I know it is planned to come out later in the year, and I'll just have to take an action to get back with some specific dates on that.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have one other question on the phone.
It got cut off by the operator on the call about the upshot of the AJ-26 failure. What was the problem there? And then I have two quick ones for Dan.
Okay. Thanks. Let's go back to questions.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, can't get into replay.
Okay, let's take a question here in the room.
Doug Money, TMCnet. Can you talk a little bit about the inspections? It sounds like they were all visual and something that you didn't have to tear down the engines for. It was something that was relatively easy you could do with a borescope or just opening up a panel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's generally right. It was pretty non-invasive, but conducted with a borescope and visual through a port that gives us access to some areas of interest, and we were able to visually confirm that the configuration of the hardware that we were interested in was as we expected.
Okay, and I think we have a couple from social media.
Sure. First question is for Frank from Gene on Twitter. He's wondering if you can discuss what the experiments are that Orbital will be performing on Cygnus.
We'll be looking at a rendezvous with a new system that we are incorporating into Cygnus that will be more cost-effective and a little bit less weight, less mass on board. And so we want to check it out thoroughly before we continue to fly with it routinely on future missions. We're also looking at new profiles for re-entry, which will ensure that we do burn up as we re-enter, but also might be more efficient in terms of saving fuel for other uses during the flight. We want to be able to fly Cygnus for extended periods of time after it leaves the station and conduct experiments for other users. There are NASA centers that want to conduct other experiments, and the longer we can stay in space, the better. And so we're looking at ways to ensure that we understand the most efficient operation of the spacecraft once it leaves the station.
The next up is from Marcia Smith on Twitter for Sarah. What's the 10% probability that you won't be able to launch tomorrow? Is it thunderstorms or winds?
That's a great question. The 10% is just for potential like cumulus clouds forming in the area that may have be convective in nature and potentially come up. But it's very small. It was hard to give it 0, so we had to give it 10 on that.
They never give us 100.
One more from social media.
Sure. Ron from Twitter is asking what the launch window looks like for tomorrow.
The launch window is 5 minutes long, which is our typical window for operating out of Wallops. And as she said, the weather looks good during that time frame. That gives us a little bit of flexibility to work a few minor problems if we need to during the count. But it works for us, and so typically it'll be 5 minutes.
Okay, a few more from the room. Let's go on the end here.
Megan Gannon from Space.com. I was wondering if you've had to do any wildlife mitigation for this launch. It looks very green near the pad right now. Do you have to worry about grass fires, or are there any specific problems to launching in July?
I can take that one if you want. There aren't any concerns that we have. We do have a plan for an indigenous plant species that we have here to kind of control them around the pad. They're called Phragmites. But right now, this time of year, that's not a concern for us.
Robert.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com again. For Frank, for today's launch readiness review, I just wonder, I know you came out with a go, but were there any pending issues that needed review? Yesterday during the science briefing, someone noted that there was a cherry picker up against Antares. Were there any last minute issues you were working?
There's always issues we're working, and occasionally we have to have people around the vehicle to adjust something or to take a look and see if an anomalous reading is accurate or not. And we had a little bit of that we had to work through during the count, and everything is checked out and looking good. There really were no issues open for the remainder of the count, and we anticipate it should be fairly smooth. I did want to mention a little bit about the future now that I've got the microphone. We are anticipating another launch this year. Should be in October, Orb 3, and then 3 more launches next year. 3 spacecraft are in various stages of completion at our Dulles facility, and we've got preparations for the next 2 going on, actually the next 3 going on as we speak. And so we are building steadily to continue to provide this service. And the Antares guys are bringing in their hardware, and things are arriving on time, and we're going to be able to maintain this schedule as long as we can fit it in between the traffic models and the other range constraints we might run into. But this is an exciting time to be involved with the space station on a commercial basis, and we applaud NASA for continuing to push that commercial capability and allow industry to help further the exploration of space using the International Space Station.
Go ahead.
J.D. Taylor, USA in Space. Again, for Frank. I know we're coming up with some bad weather after this attempt. Do you have a backup date if it doesn't launch tomorrow?
we'll just keep going day by day and check the weather and make sure the systems are working. If we don't launch tomorrow, it depends on the reason we don't launch. If it's a technical problem that takes less than a day to fix, then we'll do that. If it's something longer, we'll adjust. But as I said, NASA and Mars work very closely with us on range availability, and we of course work with the International Space Station on its availability for receiving us. We've got about 4 more days of launch capability if the weather cooperates. If it doesn't, then we'll scrub if we need to and go to the next day. There is a cutout later in July when a progress operation is being conducted, but after that I think we'll have more opportunities if we need them. Let's not go there.
Any other last questions here? Jeff?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that one, and maybe this is for Sarah again. There's a launch from the Cape scheduled for Monday morning. Can you support, if the launch here gets delayed from Sunday to Monday, can you still support that launch if there's also a launch at the Cape? Are there any range tracking assets that are shared that would cause an issue?
Yeah, we have looked at that. So there are some periods of time during both of the countdowns from the Cape and from here where we will be real-time coordinating just radio frequency deconfliction. That's the main thing, so that we're not operating on a frequency that they are using for command confidence checks and things of that nature. So, but we've already got that all worked out, and we'll be working that real time if we are, looking at a one-day slip onto a Monday launch.
Okay, and we have time for one more here. You have a question here? No? Okay.
Just waving at you.
All right, well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, especially our participants. For those of you who want to tune in to our launch coverage tomorrow, that begins at noon Eastern Time on NASA TV. You can find more about the International Space Station and about the Orb 2 mission at www.nasa.gov/station.